Hey, everybody, and welcome to not a very special episode, a time capsule episode. Woo! I'm coming at you through time. I actually even said it correctly before we started recording, but you fucking you put it in my head. I was gonna fuck it up, Devin.
Let me tell you. Let me
Uh,
let me just say.
wait. I have not yet introduced you. You don't get to talk yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
we are in a time capsule episode, which means that this is an episode out of time. We're going to talk about something today that we feel merits at least like mentioning at least on the show. And also, I want to say that part of the reason that I'm excited we're doing this now is because we have a year. We'll talk more about it, but February 2023, set your clocks, ladies and gents. We are going to talk about How I Met Your Father today. And you say, but didn't you guys already do an episode on this? Well, this is where I introduce my host companion, Devin, to talk about why we're coming back.
Hi, it's Devin. And as much as I want to address it, Sejan just set me up to talk about something else. He's clever, that one. It's why I do a podcast with him. I love him, despite the fact that he can't differentiate between the 5 types of shows that we do. Uh, and Will was even like, give him the chance this time. Don't just drive in there. Give him the chance.
In a chair. I sit in a chair in front of a computer, and I live in this chair. After the years of the COVID years, I have become one with the chair, and so it is just me and these computers in this chair, and I sit here, and you tell me we're recording, and I just start talking. I'm not keeping track of what we're recording or when.
All right, so you heard it here, folks, in this time capsule. I'm doing the intros for now. Which will be really funny when the week before this one eventually drops. I'm going to say this is going to happen in sometime in August. I mean, I screwed myself over with the Death Becomes Her one. We did not make it to July, but I think we can keep it strong until August. Let's fingers crossed on that one.
I think you need to stop calling shots there, Babe Ruth, all right? I think that might be the problem.
Hey, you're wrong about 100% of the shots you don't call. Babe Ruth, probably.
I don't think that's how that saying goes. But anyway, yeah.
Why are we here? Why are we here?
What
Why are we doing this? So the episode that we did, our epic-sode, in which we looked at How I Met Your Mother, How I Met Your Dad, and How I Met Your Father, and tried to answer the question, why, is a very different animal when compared against this episode that we're doing tonight. Because this is a time capsule episode. And, I might add, this is Sejan's idea, this episode, and I'm very glad that we're doing it. Right now I have in my hand a glass of whiskey, neat up and on the rocks. Somehow I figured out a way to do it.
Oh, see, in honor of the show, I have a glass of whiskey, and then I just poured a bunch of sugary shit into it, because I felt like that's what they would be drinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. They would probably love Chardon-Dew if they were willing to reference anything from How I Met Your Dad, which I had a Chardon-Dew a couple of episodes ago. It is really perky, and I recommend it. I also recommend
Those cowards.
Merlot bombs. Remember when we did Merlot bombs?
Man, yeah.
Those are if you're going to be drinking during this episode, or in order to get into the How I Met Your Father mood, Chardon-Dew and Merlot bombs. Those are the recommendations. But I'm thankful that Sejan suggested this episode, because this time capsule, for me, is also going to be a big old pill of anger. I am going to vomit forward all of the rage that has been seething within me since I watched the finale of How I Met Your Father Monday into Tuesday at 0 dark. And it was so bad. I just need to take a moment here. I want to get it out of the way, because I'm not as angry now. I've had some time to percolate with it to try to understand my anger. But I just want to try to illustrate how angry I was when I first watched the finale of this first season of How I Met Your Father. I was so angry, mostly because I had nobody to talk to about it.
Wait.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so you're saying you're not angry about the content, you were angry about the inability
Oh, no, I was angry about the content.
Okay.
But my anger was magnified at least threefold by the fact that I couldn't vent it anywhere. Like, it was one of these situations where it was just inside of me, and I'm like, I need to get it out. And I contacted Will, because hoping that Will might have already seen it. And then it turns out this is the other reason why we're doing a How I Met Your Father time capsule episode, is How I Met Your Father just premiered in Australia. The week of the finale in America is when the first 2 episodes went to Disney Plus over in Australia.
Strap in, Australia. Turn your TVs over to watch this one. We are giving you the best of we've got to offer.
Yeah.
We're just not sending our best, Evan.
No, we're really not.
Look, I want to make sure that there is something on the table right here and right now. I did not know I was going to come into this as the one that enjoyed it more. I'm this is news to me and the audience that this is where you are landing on this, because I'll be honest, we haven't talked about it, so it's not like I had any basis for this. I guess I just assumed that you were kind of having a good old time with this show. I just, like, because I don't have as much colorful language about this show as you seem to have, I just want to kind of get this on the table. This show exists. Like, I don't dislike this show. There's good moments. There's part of me suggesting this show was to motivate myself to watch the last couple of episodes, because I'll be honest, I got to like episode like 6 and was pretty ready to come off this. But at that point I was like, well, I'm 6 out of 10 episodes and I have to at least finish the season, and this show gave me that push. So that's where I was at with this. And I'll be honest, the last episode might be the one episode that I would say saved this show. So you being like, I need to talk to somebody about why I do, okay, that's where I'm at.
No, and I appreciate that, and I understand it. It's really weird that the 6th episode would be an episode that you could stop at, because I think the 6th episode, spoilers for deeper discussion down the line, might be my favorite episode of the entire first season in terms of just character connections.
Sure.
And
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
You are totally right, and I still found it as bland as hell. And so I was like, if this is the best this show has to offer, somebody else can watch it.
Then I can wait until I have a reason. By
the way, that's the other thing I should probably throw out there. You and I are about to talk about this, and we're clearly going to have some opinions about it. I want everyone to be very well aware that we are aware that other people are loving this show. I was not joking when I said set your clocks for February 2023. They've already renewed this for the next season.
They've renewed it for a 20-episode second season.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is even crazier to me. Yeah. Though I have questions about what that might mean. But
split season. That's what that means.
That definitely means split season, right? But then why wouldn't you just do 2 seasons? Like,
because you want to be able to promise people something like television experience. Like, it's because keep in mind that Netflix does that with some, like, they also use that language sometimes where they say season 1 part 1, season 1 part 2, but then on other shows they just say season 1 and season 2, and it's a really interesting algorithm to try and parse when they choose to use some language versus others, and Hulu is clearly experimenting with it as well.
Yeah, which makes sense when we consider what the streaming like battlefield looks like right now. And everybody is trying to ape off of everybody else. Yep. It's kind of crazy, which isn't a third reason why How I Met Your Father is an interesting thing for us to shine our spotlight on. But I'm excited to do this episode because I get to get all that rage out of me. And honestly, my rage was so bad on Monday night when I just had nobody to talk to. I went to Will, found out, no, actually, we only just got the first 2 episodes here. I went to a friend from Board with Friends, Sean, their host companion over there, who, when I did a Ghostbusters Afterlife episode, which I hope has aired by the time this time capsule comes out, but I know that they are still editing it, and I understand why. We went very off topic, and that's a show where they want to stay on topic, and we definitely talked about How I Met Your Father for 40 minutes in the middle of a Ghostbusters Afterlife podcast.
Stay on topic. They invited you, of all people, to come and talk.
They did. I'm kind of their Ghostbusters guy. And it was Bored with Friends, BORED, not Bored with Friends, BOARD. So that one is allowed to be a little more off topic.
Describes that new movie. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. But we talked about a lot of these requels, which is the term that's kind of like been buzzy. These sequels that are also redos and reboots. Yeah. So and How I Met Your Father had just come out, so it was an interesting field for to look into. So I went to Sean because I figured if there's someone else who watched at midnight, because Sean's an even bigger fan of How I Met Your Mother than I am. And trust me, when you hear Sejan talk about the cult of How I Met Your Mother I created back when we were in university, that's an impressive feat by any person to be a bigger fan of How I Met Your Mother than I was. Uh,
Yeah,
sorry.
no, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So did he watch as
So
well?
he has not gotten back to me. And to be fair, he
All
has
right,
his
the
wife is
best
expecting.
the best end result of this story ever.
Yeah, is
Yeah,
that
no.
so? I went to bed. I went upstairs to brush my teeth and go to bed, and I'm just like, I'm just gonna be angry. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, I was bright red. Like my reaction to that final scene of this show was so infuriating. And then the fact that I have two people that I should be able to go to, and then neither one of them was able to do
Oof.
it.
Oof. I'm trying to decide if I ride your ass about this now or if I wait till we get to it because like I want to talk about the show in somewhat of a chronological order of the show
Oh,
itself
we can
because
do that. We can totally do it.
yeah,
This
yeah.
is just, I just want to make sure that everyone
Just let's
understands.
put a pin in the final moment of this show
Yeah,
because
we're
we
not.
do have to talk
I'm not
about
gonna
it.
talk about anything content wise. We're probably gonna give a spoiler warning before we talk about anything content related, just as a heads up, so you can listen to the banter. You can listen to me be freaking crazy about this. I was so red when I saw myself in the mirror. I actually was nervous. I punched my microphone now, just out of the nervousness that I felt that night. So what I ended up doing is I have a friend named Eric who lives in Thailand, and he teaches English over there. And Eric has been my friend since high school, and he's a great guy. I love you, Eric. Shout out to Eric. Thank you, Eric, for being my friend. And what Eric and I usually talk about, and what we had just talked about, is comic books, and specifically comic book movies. Because Eric and I were like comic book movie like buddies for a while. Like he didn't have anyone to go to them with, so we would go together. And it turned into this thing where we would have discussions about comic book movies. And there are times where I will wake up in the middle of the night and I'll have a question from Eric like, why wouldn't Doctor Strange just make Thanos forget about the Infinity Stones? And then I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that you asked. And I will write out a wall of text why that wouldn't have worked in Avengers Infinity War. And how they
Not
actually,
least of which because he was not trained yet.
yeah, I mean,
Strange is still a very young wizard in that, and I will say, as somebody that spoilers for I think the next episode of the actual Say report, so to clock this when I start talking about it. Him in No Way Home, like is a revelation for me. With
yeah.
that character, like completely turns that character into something much more interesting. Like, and I loved Doctor Strange before, but like I have to admit he was very one note, and in both his movie and all of his appearances, No Way Home goes out of its way to give him a character that I fell in love with all over again.
And Yahoo
Yeah,
is going to look at that character and say he cannot draw people into theaters
this
with
is for another,
Multiverse of Madness.
this is for a main show, dude.
I know it's for a main show, but that's the
Don't-
thing.
don't
We've
start doing-
already
don't start-
talked about it.
We
That's
have to talk about How I Met Your Father. You cannot avoid
I'm
it.
not avoiding how. No, I'm just saying. But that's what I did. So I went to Eric, right? And I'm used to getting 4 a.m. messages from Eric with like wonderful Marvel No style questions where I get to just like dump out beautiful answers that are pretty much just bullshit off the top of my head. And I turned the tables on him by complaining about the final episode of How I Met Your Father. And it's how I was eventually able to get to sleep that night.
Well, you know, when Spider-Man showed up at the end of this show, it really did kind of throw me.
We said we weren't going to talk
Oh, right,
about
we gotta
it.
wait. We gotta wait in chronological order. Right.
Your rule. You broke your own rule. But but yeah, it was and to the fact that like, and because there's a huge time difference, and also the fact that he is in like not the city, he lives in the country, so it'll be like days between him having actual service. He got back to me and he's like, "Is everything okay?" Like he was concerned for me because of just everything, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it's all fine. I just needed to get it out somewhere," and you seemed like the best place at the moment based on time differences and everything. So
I'm gonna say right here, right now, then. Now is the time where we're going to institute the spoiler warning.
Yeah,
At this
spoiler
point,
warning,
if you have
yeah.
not finished the series, if you have not started the series, check it out. Check out our first episode on it then.
Yeah.
Like, if you haven't started the series, like, check it all out. Like, take it all in. Because I am going to stand here, I cannot believe I'm saying this, as the one saying, watch this show. I really thought I was going to be the stinker today. And I'm always happy to find out I'm not the stinker. But, like, man, I'm just surprised.
I gotta tell you, I mean, I would also recommend this show. My anger for this, as you will come to find while we go on a chronological journey through the first 10 episodes of How I Met Your Father, is really fueled by you fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
And, fool me 3 times. Because this is kind of fool me 3 times. Because I got excited about How I Met Your Dad, right?
Yeah.
And then I am with How I Met Your Father, and that's
Wasn't
it.
Sarah Chalk in that? Am I just making that up?
Sarah Chalk. You're thinking of Mad Love.
Oh, I don't know.
You remember Mad Love?
Never mind.
With
Fuck,
Jason Biggs and Sarah
yeah.
Chalk and Dale from Tucker and Dale. I should know his name. I love him as an actor.
Because he's also from Reaper.
Yeah. Also from the Pac-Man one.
The Pac-Man one.
But yeah.
So,
and then also the Cheryl from Archer. I just want to give out the shout out of that. Those are the people who are in Mad Love. But yeah.
And so just to put a cap on something also from our other episode about How I Met Your Father that I'm just going to bring up just this once, just now. But if you dedicated yourself to 10 episodes of How I Met Your Father, like I did, I go back and watch the rest of Pretty Smart. the character arcs and the growth of that show as becoming a good show by the end of it versus this show just being stagnant the entire time. Like, I could not tell you. I watched all of Pretty Smart in the days after I finished the show the other day because I was like, I need to watch Pamela Fryman doing what's right. I'm only saying that now because I am going to revert back into the guy defending How I Met Your Father because I do think that at the end of the day, it is a better than mediocre sitcom. My problem is that How I Met Your Mother set a bar. Right. And we talked about this in the last episode. How I Met Your Mother changed the way that at least we looked at sitcoms, if not the world. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very high bar. And the idea of even daring to try and make a show that would even come close to it is insane, which is why How I Met Your Dad falls on its face. How I Met Your Father becomes what it is. Like, How I Met Your Mother is such an important thing in its moment. It's such an important cultural touchstone, literally in like good for that moment and important in that moment. In the looking back on it, maybe not so great, but we cannot deny the impact that it had. That there's no way to touch that. Like, that is lightning in a bottle, right? So this show kind of is starting at a disadvantage for me, and maybe that's where some of this comes from. Is that like, yeah, it's not great, but you know what? It wasn't going to be perfect. It was never going to be perfect. And so like that whole idea of they had the balls to go for it, and they at least achieve a more than watchable show. It's just that there's just no way they're ever gonna. I want them to prove me wrong. I understand that I'm saying a lot of absolutes right now and saying that like, oh, they never got as good as How I Met Your, and then there could be 3 seasons from now and it could be the best show ever created. I want that to happen. I want to be the asshole in this moment. But as things stand at the end of season 1, it never gets as good as How I Met Your Mother, specifically season 1.
Specifically season 1. Yeah,
that's that is key. Is that How I Met Your Mother? Not only was it fire, it was fire by the end of its first season.
Yeah. There was a way that I felt at the end of season 1 of How I Met Your Mother that I don't feel here. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but It's definitely a thing that I noted while I was driving home in preparation for this episode. I will also say this, generally for the time capsule episodes, because they're more focused, I have notes. I have no notes on this one. I just have a glass of whiskey and a glass of water. And that's what I want to go into this. Now, I've seen every episode. I've seen the first 2 episodes probably 6 times each. And then I've seen each subsequent episode, I'd say conservatively 3 times. The only one I've seen the least is the finale episode, which I watched at Zero Dark, which I did for every episode of this season. Sorry, Mom, Dad, and Dale. I know I made it act like I was watching it new with you every time, but I had to know every week at midnight. I had to sit and watch it because I didn't want to stumble into something that, and we'll
watch. The fake watch is something we will need to cover one day, but not today. Because,
no, that's not part of today.
The psyche involved that the 2 of us clearly share. The fake watch is something we definitely have to address.
Yeah, but it was something with this show.
So I was kind of watching along, not nearly as dedicated as you. I would remember like 2 or 3 weeks in, like, oh shoot, I haven't been watching How I Met Your Father, and then I would get like 3 or 4 episodes to watch. Now, legitimately, things you need to remember. This is not a show that I would like sit down with my popcorn and watch. This was like, I'm at work, I'll put this on in the background. So like that was the first way I viewed it. And then today I was like, well, we're going to record about this, so I should rewatch some stuff. So I literally sat down and did the entire season today, just like skipping around to parts that I remembered that I wanted to bring up. So like I have seen every episode 1.5 times at the most.
That's fair, and that I understand that. Here's the last thing I'm going to say before we get into the content-driven episode by episode thing that you want to do. My father on Sunday looked me dead in the eyes and said, "What channel is How I Met Your Father on?" And I said, "Well, it's a Hulu original." And he's like, "So it's not on any channels?" And I'm like, "No, it's just on Hulu." And he's like, "Okay, good." I thought I was going nuts when I couldn't find it to tape it. And I'm like, "No, you're not. You're not going nuts, Dad." But I think
somebody's looking for it.
That's somebody looking for it. A, but B, it really speaks to your whole. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that I would watch, but it's not necessarily something I was following along with.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
think it's
to not know that it was like a Hulu like exclusive thing that you were watching on Hulu every week is definitely telling.
Yeah, I mean, and it speaks also to the fact that what I will definitely say for me is that How I Met Your Mother became destination viewing for me.
Yeah.
And the fact that How I Met Your Father, that's two examples of it not having that same destination viewing impact on its audience. And I don't think you're the only ones who could say that. Like,
I don't know though. Like, is that a fault of the show or is that a fault of just the way we watch TV nowadays? I don't know if I.
But think about how we were watching TV back in 2005.
You're totally right. In the long run, you're totally right. Like the idea that I at that point wasn't watching TV at all and was waiting for the DVDs was essentially my attitude. Like you're right to point it out. I don't want to ignore the fact that like the ways in which we watch TV have changed drastically. So not only are they in an uphill battle to tackle one of the most influential sitcoms of all time, they're also in an uphill battle because they're now doing it in a period in which we don't watch TV the same way we did when that show was on. So in a lot of ways, it really points the idea of maybe you don't fight that fight. And maybe that's what they chose to do. Maybe that's why it never quite hits the heights that other show did, is because that's just not what they're aiming for. And maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. It's just you put yourself you name yourself How I Met Your Father. More specifically, you use the font.
Like you use the theme song.
Yeah.
You use locations. Like
you go out of your way to invite that comparison, and here we are comparing it. But even then, I don't know if that's a fair conversation sometimes. And that is the problem. Every step of the way with this show is there is so much harkening back to the original show that you find yourself just kind of comparing it to it, and then at some point you feel bad for doing it, right? It's like, and it's a really weird thing as a viewer to feel like it's not what I want to be focused on. I want to be focused on the hilarious content, but that's not what's happening.
Right. Because, and it's like Law and Order just came back this year as well, and they continued it as a new season of Law and Order. So in weird ways, this kind of feels like that Scrubs season 9. Like, this feels like season 10 of How I Met Your Mother in a lot of very strange ways.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider the litmus test that you're judging it against. All right, so now it's time for how Sejin wanted to go through it. And this is all Sejin's episode, so sorry if I derailed your plan there. I just needed to share how angry I was the first time I saw the finale.
So you're better at remembering this stuff than I. How many episodes have been out there before we recorded our first one?
We recorded it the Tuesday. We're fucking assholes. We recorded it the Tuesday after the first 2 episodes premiered.
The first 2. So Pilot and FOMO had been out.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, the bigger thing is that this show does a very good job, just much like How I Met Your Mother, of introducing a sitcom style storytelling to some very wide stories, right? Like the ways in which they are the stuff that's much more important is the bigger picture is something that the show does carryover from its predecessor and does it well. So like the problem is I'm probably going to talk about stuff and it's not going to all necessarily be in an episode order, but definitely the ways in which things happen, right? So last time we kind of really talked about this, we talked a little bit about like Sophie and the various possibilities, right, of who was going to be who. And I remember when episode 3 came out, you were like, "Have you watched the end of episode 3?" And I was like, "Ah!" And we tweeted about this. You can even go back in our Twitter history and find this. There is a moment that we called out in our other episode that I want to point to, and I think that's a good place for us to start, where we both said, and all three of us said, I think Will was in this too.
Will was
so
right in. Yeah.
We said, so at this point, they've really established this really vague idea of your dad was at the party that night, blah, blah, blah. And the idea that they zoom in on a couple of faces was definitely telling, but that idea that was introduced, it could have been anybody at that party. So they could literally point to a dude in the background and be like, "No, that was your dad." And we said that, and then episode 3 did exactly fucking that by introducing Josh Peck's character of Drew, or at least introducing him as a possibility, right? I'm trying to remember if he showed up in FOMO or not.
Oh, he does not show up in FOMO. He is introduced in episode 3. And we started calling him, Will and I started calling him Drew Mosby. And then Will,
I don't agree with that. I disagree. Drew is a much more interesting character. The what's his nuts is Jesse? What's his name? Oh my god, why can't I remember his name?
Jesse?
Yeah, he is clearly Ted Mosby, right?
Is he? I don't think he is. And that's, I really need to say, I don't think any of these characters are one-to-one XP. Now you're going out of order. You said don't go out of order.
Well, fine, but okay, but to my
if we're
point
going to
about
talk XPs, there are no direct XPs for any of these characters. What it actually feels like is they took the 5 main characters of How I Met Your Mother and put them into a blender and then spooned out 5 characters, and 6. Then there was a little bit of extra in there, so we'll have a 6th character.
That'll be Charlie.
Oh man, I gotta tell you, this is already crazy because Charlie grew to be my favorite character, even though I'm like, I fucking hate Charlie in the last time that we talked about it.
And watch Pretty Smart then. But that idea that Charlie grows as a character is definitely present, and I don't disagree.
And like I said, and even in that episode, it's like they didn't really give him anything to do in these first 2 episodes. Yeah. And then he has full-on episodes that are dedicated to his story, which is magnificent. But again, we got to talk about what it is. No, but we called him Drew Mosby.
Yeah, the introduction of Drew is a very important element to this series.
But I want to get a dig in at Will because he wasn't available for this. Will then foolishly revealed to me that he makes overnight oats, and I have not ceased calling Will Drew Mosby since that reveal.
Oh man, I'm a very together person.
I make overnight oats.
I like Drew. I like Drew a lot, and I think he's really interesting because I think at the end of the day, so they introduced Josh Peck as this kind of like stand-up, well put together character that Sophie falls for, and there's this whole idea that like, I'm trying to get myself together. You're already there, and I don't know if that'll work, but let's try it. And he's very open about the fact that like, yeah, sometimes I'm too put together, and it annoys even me. So like, there's a lot of complexity in their relationship that I think is really interesting. I think one of the things that this show does better than How I Met Your Mother ever did is make people fucking people. There are so many characters and side characters that specifically, I mean, that are not just there.
Hashtag Jasper is the father.
But the idea being that like everybody is just a little bit more complex than they first let on, and that's always introduced at some point. Whereas like in How I Met Your Mother, like there are a lot of side characters, and it is actually even hinted at in this show, that are just fucking cartoons. They have one shtick, and that is their shtick, and that's funny for the bit. And Seinfeld was always really good at this, right? Like introducing that side character for one episode, and they act like they've all like known them and hung out with them for months, but like we've never seen them before, but they just introduce them that way, and then like they're just a one-note joke, and then they're gone. And then like Seinfeld was also really good at then bringing that character back and bringing that joke back in a very deadpan way. Phenomenal. How I Met Your Mother tried to do that the same way, and very often it worked. But then very often you had those like weird characters. All I can ever think of is Katy Perry as Honey in that one episode, and it is like the most like weird joke about this girl for that entire episode. But like that's the joke for the entire episode. What How I Met Your Mother does is starts with that and then like makes that character human. I just want to applaud that. Like I think that's a really interesting move on their part and very much a sign of the times of it being made 15 years later, you know?
I agree. I will give it that same credit. However, with Drew, as he became more human, he became less likable to me.
I mean, I think he became less likable to Sophie if the show.
Right. Well,
I
just want to make sure that it's an important distinction, because just because somebody becomes human, and this is still a moment in season 3, in episode 3, season 3, we're so far off from that. In episode 3, where Sophie is yelling at the girl who like is being nice to Jesse, and then as soon as he goes to get more drinks, is like, oh my god, the proposal fail guy is hitting on me. Skull face, smiley face, skull face, smiley face. Like that girl. And she's like, he's just trying to be a nice guy, and I can't believe you treat my friend that way. And she's like, I know, I agree. And Sophie's like, no, you don't get to be relatable in this moment. Which even in that moment, like that girl is a one-off character to like to demonstrate to Sophie how hard it is for Jesse to move on from what happened. But even in that moment, they humanize her. But that act of humanizing her does kind of make her sympathetic to the fact that Sophie has to be like, no, we have to stop that. Because right now you're the villain in this moment.
Yeah, no, and it's smart. It's intelligent writing. It's good, intelligent writing. Yeah, and I just want to make sure that like we don't shit all over this without talking about a few of the things that.
Dude, as mad as I was, I could not shit all. This is a show that I willingly watched a minimum of 2 times every week.
Right.
Like willingly. Monday nights became, I need to stay up till midnight, watch How I Met Your Father, and then go to bed. And then I need to wait long enough so that it will seem fresh when I watch it with my family.
Nice. But yeah. But Drew, like, I think that, but more to that point, the idea that the more you get to know Drew, the more you really realize that something is just not working between him and Sophie is like hugely important. And the fact that that's not wrapped up in some weird joke in one episode, or it's not like spread out like, oh, over the break we broke up or anything like that, like over the season break, I mean, but like they like that just doesn't happen. They show you that relationship kind of naturally falls apart in a weird way. And like, that's cool. Like, that's really interesting. But yeah, so we get the introduction of Drew in 3, and that kind of becomes like a huge part of the series. So like the fact that doesn't get introduced until after they drop the first 2 episodes was a little wild to me, because we didn't get to talk about it at all then, right? If it didn't.
We didn't get to talk about it. What we talked about in that episode is Josh Peck's been in a lot of the marketing. Why wasn't he in these 2 episodes?
Yeah.
And honestly, they were kind of smart with having it as a thing to bring you back, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the show is structured really well, right? So to that point, so that's what's going on with Sophie, at least for the most of the season, is her and Drew, and her kind of dealing with her feelings there. But then, like, you know, this is an ensemble show, so like also watching the rest of them, Sid and Hannah, right? Like, is a really interesting one, and you were really worried in the original episode that like something was going to happen, like they were just going to write her off, right? Like
when she showed up in the 3rd episode, I mean, weird storyline in that 3rd episode that they have the controllable sex toys for each other, which, and I'm not trying to kink shame or say that there's anything negative about that. That's a weird surprise gift. and it's specifically a weird surprise gift when you look at so many of Hannah's complaints within their relationship later on in the season. Like it's a really interesting that like that's the first reveal that these 2 aren't always on the same page with each other. And it's going to be a bigger deal going forward, but then is it?
I mean, don't know what to tell you. I think the first hint that they might not be on the same page as each other is when he proposes to her just before she leaves. Like there's a
Well, I
weird
mean, that
element to
is,
that.
he proposes to her the first time that there's a lack of communication is, we're going to go see Beyonce, and then I'm going to have forgotten the tickets here where I'll propose. Yeah, no, don't say you're going to go see Beyonce.
Unless you have tickets for Beyonce to go celebrate after.
Yeah, like,
And you really do pick them up at the bar.
weird thing to lie about, especially considering just how powerful Beyonce is. Uh, you don't.
Yeah.
She must be not happy about that. But yeah, but her leaving. I mean, that was like an emergency. Like, it was a surprise. It wasn't like she was going to be leaving and he decided, oh, I'll propose before she leaves.
I guess part of it is that the rest of the series really treats it like this was always part of the plan for them. And then, like, to that, like, her later on accepting an even longer time away from, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like the ways in which it is kind of thrown in to complicate their relationship in the first couple of episodes is interesting. But then in the rest of the series, it feels like this has been an ongoing issue, I guess, an ongoing, like, boiling under
The
surface thing for them, right? And that's just not true from what we know in the first two episodes. So there's some weird disconnect for me in the way in that but the ways in which, like, they wrap a bow on that is really cute. It's not, I don't know, necessarily believable, but by the end of the series, by the end of the season at least, like, they act like, no, we're really serious about this. And so I'm very interested to see going forward if how they continue the whole long distance comedy.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, that's my biggest issue with this stuff is, like, Sid, all he has keeping him in New York is his bar.
Yeah.
And his bar is failing. So, like, go to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Like, go be with your fiance or your wife. It's like, and also, like, the same issue with, like, Ian, yeah, he's going to be working on a boat and all of that, but Sophie doesn't really have anything keeping her in New York.
Yeah.
Like, she could have gone. I mean, and that's where some of the rage comes from, Sagen. Is that,
I mean, let's
continue
obviously
on, though, yeah.
No, but I want to just, the other side of that is, like, it's easier said than done is to pick up your whole life and follow somebody
True.
somewhere,
That's
right?
very true.
Like that is true, and it's interesting the ways in which this show addresses it. It's just that to suspend our disbelief for the kind of shit that you have to for a sitcom, for these situational comedies to have their situations, there's so much suspension of disbelief of A, B, and C that then asking us to take that dose of reality that is, I'm not going to move with you to Australia to go live on a boat for a year, is like it's a weird whiplash between, like, that and also, you know, we're two guys that don't have solid jobs, but we can afford this apartment that's clearly $3,000 or $4,000 a month in New York City.
Oh, I think it's still rent controlled. I think that they're subletting it from Lillian Marshall. I think that's the whole Wesleyan of it.
But even
all.
in 2005, it was still a $1,200 a month apartment, $1,800.
But again, they also got it, like, through rent control bullshit. Like, that was like that they made it a point to have it as a discussion in How I Met Your Mother, how they could afford that freaking entire floor of an apartment building.
Right.
And so the fact that they're like, we got it from Wesleyan alum sort of felt like their hand wave of why, like, we can afford it.
For sure. But
Yeah.
that's what I mean is,
Yeah.
like, that's the suspension of disbelief, is that something like that happened. So, like, in a world in where that kind of shit just can on a whim occur to this character, why can he not figure out this other problem? Becomes really hard. It's the Superman problem.
Yeah.
At some point, you give these people enough superpowers, you have to start asking what can stand in their way, and like, the answer is really nothing. So what is complication?
Brotherfuckers. She's having a moment. Leighton Meester is having a moment on the Say Report, and I'm kind of here for it. But yeah, it's really, though, I think the other thing about long distance is difficult is it would be one thing if Sid was like, I don't want to pick up my life and move to LA, and Sophie was like, I don't want to pick up my life and move to Australia with Ian, who I just met. If there wasn't a character who literally picked up his life and moved to New York.
Well,
Like,
and then
within the
they
suspension of
complicate that
disbelief,
earlier.
like,
Yeah. And then like later they complicate that even further with the reveal that it's maybe not the first time he's done it, right?
yeah, like when that came out, I'm just like, what is happening?
What is this?
Like,
What
I
is
like Charlie and I enjoy what's going on, but that reveal in the fifth episode, oh no, the sixth episode, that Valentina is not the first time he's done that is very strange. And also seems out of character for that character. Like, he was so frightened by the subways and everything, but apparently he's gone to Brazil. Have you seen the opening of the Incredible Hulk season?
I thought you were going to ask about Fast and the Furious.
Fast Five is the proper title.
Specifically Fast Five, yes, but the point stands. I know it's a weird moment for him. So yeah, so Sarah and not Sarah, Hannah and Sid. That's where the Sarah came from.
Yeah,
I think.
Sarah's that's their cute little name, just like Nessie.
But so by the end of the series, their resolution is that they just elope, which is again really interesting. But like, you know what it is it felt to me like they wanted 13 episodes, didn't get it, and so they had to slam a bunch of resolution into the last like 20 minutes of the whole season.
And the second time I watched it, I was there for all of the ones that were not related to the big one. Yeah. Like I actually was like emotionally connected to just what all of it meant the second time through. Because the first time through, I'll be honest, I was still a little starstruck by something that happens in the episode. But no, let's try to focus on the episodes again. So the third episode, I mean, it's weird. I don't know how to approach it as like, it's this big amorphous blob. And the episodes that really like speak to me and matter to me are 5 and 6. This is a real compliment sandwich. Not a compliment sandwich.
So we should talk about episode 4 for one second, only because it really emulates, it like mirrors very specifically the party episode from the first season of How I Met Your Mother, which is episode like 3, isn't it? Or 2 even? With like the roof.
So that's episode 6. The Slutty Pumpkin is the first time that they have a party like that.
But like not the party on the roof, but the never-ending party, the party that he keeps throwing because he keeps hoping Robin's going to show up, and she keeps like putting it off. So he literally throws a party.
Oh, that's the
for, like,
second episode.
Yeah,
that's the second episode.
That's the episode I'm thinking of. Slutty Pumpkin as well is also a little bit part of this, maybe more because it ends on the roof. But the ways in which
not just ending on the roof, but the fact that it's kind of a costume party.
Well, like isn't it somebody's birthday? Well, one of them is a 30th birthday party too. At some point, like there's a lot of party.
Dirty 30, episode 4, Dirty 30. Is Sophie's 30th birthday, which made me very happy because of all the conjecture we had about her being 29 in the first episode and immediately getting resolution within the first 4 episodes. And that episode, that episode smashed so many How I Met Your Mother tropes into it. It kind of hurt. Like, it was just like everything together. Yeah. Like it ended up working, but it's one of those things where like, let's throw in a little bit of Slutty Pumpkin with everybody dressed as Christina Aguilera's Dirty video. Let's throw in a bit of the episode where Ted turns 30 and winds up with a goat in his bathroom.
Or which one's the conversation about 28's too old for a party? Isn't that's another one that they do, right? Where they start talking about how they're getting too old for shit and they're like 28. Yeah. So there's also some of that also in here in the conversation specifically with Drew and how he's a much more mature person than she is and she's trying to figure that shit out. Like, it's just really interesting the ways in which some of that stuff is shifted, some of that stuff stays the same, but it is worth noting that as an episode that really emulates a How I Met Your Mother kind of like story
vibe
and all that
and feeling,
like episode 4 is the episode where they do that.
Yes, and it's kind of weirdly the only episode that I feel really and truly emulates How I Met Your Mother, kind of until the finale, but that's like direct 1-to-1 emulation, not based on a story by Ted Mosby.
Right. But let's do 5 and 6. You really like 5 and 6.
5 and 6, I think, are the strongest episodes of the show, and I think that it's a build, and then it's like kind of a weird drop, as it becomes kind of more serialized, and as a result of that more serialization, kind of becomes beholden to that storyline so that there's less room for like the fun sort of moments. If that
Is this
makes
because Paget
sense.
Brewster shows up? Is this the only
Yeah,
reason?
so I love Paget Brewster. That I'll talk about that. No, it's this fact that I really wasn't expecting her mother to show up quite so soon.
Right.
Like, I knew it had to happen when there was such a focus on her mother. Plus, mother and daughter stories, which is essentially what something like How I Met Your Father is going to be. I mean, we eventually meet Ted's parents, right? But mostly so Barney can fuck Ted's mom. Like, maybe, possibly, who knows? And it could just be a lie that Ted told his kids so that they'd be all right with him dating their aunt after their mother passed away. Getting off topic, meeting the mother this early, it made me happy that that was a thing that occurred. I also liked it because it wrapped up and referenced so much from the first episode. It feels very much like a How I Met Your Mother, sort the way that they would pick up the dangling plot lines from other things, but then like not just be, oh, remember this happened, actually start with that as the seedling of a completely different storyline.
Sure.
Was very exciting. And, you know, I really like the fact of the matter is that the best character in the show is Sid. And as much as Charlie is probably my favorite character, Sid is weirdly the best developed character. And the reason why I would say that he's the best developed character is because of every character in the show, he has gotten to have a meaningful moment with each of them.
Yeah.
Even if it's just in a B-side, we see Sid actually trying to forge these relationships with other people. And honestly, I think it's because he's floundering since he doesn't have Hannah there with him. So he's just kind of starved for that connection to another person.
I mean, it really speaks to me the ways in which I really fell in love with Marshall in the first season of How I Met Your Mother, right? That he, what it is he's earnest and trying and not always succeeding, but like he's just a good person, and that is so rare in television writ large nowadays. And then add to that in this show in particular, in the cast that he's surrounded by, it's really really difficult to kind of deal with some of these other people sometimes because of the things that they do and they say. But like with him, he is always coming from a place of honesty, and so you love him, right? And he's designed that way, and very well like acted and created and performed that way. Like he comes across perfect. And
that's very interesting that you say that, because when I look at Sid, I see the thing from Barney, which even though it might have been an act, he could feign genuine interest into any other person he was having a conversation with. And
yeah, but
with
I think
Sid,
the joke
because,
at the end of the day with Barney is that you learn that the secret is he really does care, right?
Right.
Like that's the whole reveal on his character.
Exactly. But I think that's what I'm pouring into Sid, is this fact that, sure, it's this moment with Valentina at the bar and they're talking about sex toys and all of this, but he is genuinely invested in what she has to say and what she's saying. Like right. He has that's where I talk about, like, it's this big milkshake. So he gets the earnestness and like a really good best friend stuff from Marshall with this genuine interest in other people that you get from Barney Stinson.
Yeah.
And it builds this character that is an unstoppable fucking force when it comes to somebody that I want to root for.
Yeah.
Like, to the fact that there were moments where I was so mad at Hannah, and I commend the creators of this show, the writers of this show, for being able to bring me back and understand that, like, no, she was just frustrated in that moment. And, like, she's allowed to be frustrated in that moment. Because even though he didn't mean it in a negative place, it affected her life in a way that she wasn't expecting.
Well, and so you have to compare that to something like Lily, right?
Yeah.
And the whole like Marshall and Lily relationship, and I remember at the end of the first season of that show where people just fucking hated Lily for what she, you know, why am I? It's spoiler alert for How I Met Your Mother, I guess, where she breaks up with Marshall at the end of that first season. Like, and I remember people being like, she's the worst character, and like, and you know, obviously, like some of those people came around later on, other people jumped off the boat later, depending on what, your feelings on what happens with her character. But like, I always loved Lily, just for the record. But like that idea that compared to the ways in which Lily is definitely a bad person in a lot of moments, they never quite justify some of the more like beyond fair shit that she does in How I Met Your Mother. They make it a point all the time in this show, and I think it's just a matter of, just because it's made 15 years later, they want to make sure that people are treated fairly. Like, she pulls some shit on Sid from time to time, but as you said, they always go back to it and it's always addressed. And it's not that Sid doesn't fuck up. It's just that when Sid fucks up, he fucks up from a place of like trying to do the right thing and earnestness, and just fucks up, right? Like, he just like, so it's also like, he's not perfect either. Like let's not act like he is and put him up on a pedestal. It's just that you're right. Like, he is a much more interesting character to watch than anybody else on this show, because at the end of the day, he's just a much more likable character than a lot of the people in this universe, not just this show.
Not just likable, he's also well developed. We've seen the most moments with him as a child of anybody. Like, and seen them. Because that moment in the 4th episode where Ellen is like mad at, I was going to call him Charlie, but that's Jesse, for the fact that he left, and like, he's not really a brother to her. He was never really a brother to her growing up. Like, that was the thing where, like, I felt that. Like, it was a really important thing to like explain their characters and their relationship. And like, why she would want to get her own apartment, because maybe it's not comfortable living with this guy who's kind of a stranger, except for the fact that his biological parents adopted you. Like, it's very interesting, but we didn't see that. We didn't get the flashback, where we have seen a like 12-year-old Sid and even like older, a little bit older version of Sid. And that's important too, to like connecting with a character.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. I love Sid. I love what Sid stands for, and his whole storyline of like Sophie's mother taking his masturbation virginity is very, very good. Like, it's good storytelling. It's interesting. It's engaging. And it to an episode where like Sophie has a blind spot about how her mother is a fucking train wreck.
Yeah.
Like, and that's basically it. And then like, it's a really good Charlie thing where he realizes that like, all of the trauma that I've went through, I can help other people.
Yeah.
It moves the needle a lot for the ancillary characters, that 5th episode, and it's important.
And which rolls
and
into
Drew's not really in it, and I fuck Drew.
So that rolls us then into 6, where we simply called Stacy.
Oh, Stacy.
Yeah.
Did we say the name of episode 5? I don't think we did. We've given all the other names so far.
5 is the good mom.
The good mom. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good because Ellen wants to watch the good fight. It all makes sense. And Rachel is introduced, and Ellen actually has a really good story there too. It's like the first time that Ellen feels like her own character and not just a prop for Jesse.
Yeah.
Which is
I mean, specifically because she calls Jesse out right?
In the 4th episode. She calls Jesse out in the 4th episode, so then by the 5th episode, she is able to like divorce,
start developing her own,
and develop her own character.
Yeah.
Which is very nice. So then we get to Stacy. And Stacy is the one that feels the most relatable, specifically in terms of internet sleuthing to like try to find a person. And it's also the first time that Hannah is sort of vilified, because she's the one who calls Sophie Stacy, which is what sets Sophie down this whole path of who the fuck this bitch.
Right.
And I don't know, I really like that episode though, mostly as much as, first of all, you have another great Sid moment where it's Sid's first moment with Sophie talking about like what it means to be in a real adult committed relationship. Right. And the fact that always bring like apology candy if you know that you fucked up. It's like an admission of guilt without having to admit guilt, I guess. But everything about it, I like that one because like it was the first time I saw that like, well, Drew is not sticking around, because if you're gonna lie about the little stuff, you're also gonna lie about the big stuff.
Right.
And again, you have another beautiful Sid moment where he tells the story of why he owns Pemberton's, and that's a wonderful thing. That honestly, Kim Cattrall is not telling that part of the story, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's the part where you need to suspend disbelief that Kim Cattrall is telling the story as older
Right.
Sophie.
Right.
Because why the fuck would she know? I mean, she was there, but what fucking point does it have to anything that's going on? Like,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
entertainment for entertainment's sake. But then on the other hand of it, you have Margot Harshman, Tawny from Even Stevens, the crazy girl from Fired Up. And I'm not saying that in a negative way. Like, she's legitimately classified as, no, I think I might have something wrong with me mentally. That's the thing that she says in the movie. Because she, like, just wants to start fires and stab people. Just saying. You have Margot Harshman coming in, killing it, right? Another, like, actor from when we were kids watching TV, which is the real thing that How I Met Your Father really excels in, is finding these actors from when you were a kid watching TV and bringing them back, looking at like Hilary Duff and Josh Peck and all these other actors.
And Colby Smulders.
Yeah. Well, oh, we're blowing it. We already said spoilers. Robin Scherbatsky does show up in one of these episodes. Not episode 6, though. But the whole idea of Ellen goes out and sleeps with this girl and then Jesse starts dating her the next day, that's like such good farcical storytelling.
Yeah.
It's like a Frasier, where like Niles and Frasier are dating the same woman, but they never call her the same name.
Yeah, they never. They
Like
never
Niles
realized
calls her Peg and Frasier calls her Margaret.
Yeah.
and they probably make like, oh, that's very interesting, Niles. Peg is short for Margaret. I've never really understood that, Frasier.
And cut to commercial.
Yeah.
Eddie poops on the floor. Cut to commercial.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Martin knows the whole time, but he's not saying anything. Yeah, it's just like, it's just such wonderful farcical storytelling in that moment. So it has the heart on the side of the creation farm, which that joke too is also like, what about the host? You didn't make him. Actually, he was conceived on the premises in the room you'll be staying in.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's
sorry.
just.
I'm looking at episode 7 and I'm having some thoughts. So I mean,
let's get to episode 7, because episode 7 is weird.
Yeah, okay, so Rivka Rebel, just because we're keeping this up, that is the name of episode 7. And episode 7 does something that you could tell me they talked about this before, and I could not promise you I knew this, but like the way in which episode 7 takes the entire thing and really starts to lean into Sophie's photography, like much like Ted's like architecture, right? In
season 3.
Right, like the way in which all of a sudden this becomes such a defining part of her character, and we really, I mean, like, I couldn't tell you if they mentioned it before episode 7.
Oh, in the first episode, while she's talking and getting to know Ian, she mentions that she's a photographer. Right now, she's making ends meet by doing, like, engagement photos and event photography, but her real dream is urban photography. Oh, that's when you run up and take a picture of someone without them knowing and hope that they don't punch your camera? Exactly. Like, it is blink and you miss it, 30 seconds in the first episode. And then it becomes the plot point of the last 4 episodes of this
7,
season.
8, 9, and 10 revolve like so heavily around her being an artist, and like her like really breaking out of doing like the gig work so that she can start to do her own thing. And it's just the ways in which it just kind of like comes to a head. I was so blindsided by that like I couldn't tell you really much more about episode 7.
So episode 7 is the episode where they think they drug kids, but actually it was just ibuprofen and like Midol. It's some stomach thing, right? They're bloat and headache free is the joke that Valentina makes.
That's right. That's the one where the kids steal the shit out of her purse.
Yeah, they
right?
steal the red Altoid Men, not the wintergreen Altoid Mint. No, yeah.
I mean, I love me a good drug mix-up storyline. I mean, Death at a Funeral is one of my favorite farces for a reason. But like, yeah, that whole bit is weird. Just the idea that they might have possibly drugged kids at a bat mitzvah, right?
At a bat mitzvah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, it's something. I think the thing that I like least about that episode, well, first of all, the whole storyline with them, because the storyline is the hard day or the pump up day, the pump day. They make it sound like they're gonna fuck each other, Jesse and Sid.
Yeah.
But really, we're just gonna motivate each other to work and get our work done.
Oh, right. And what they mean by motivate each other is lock each other in a room.
Yeah, basically, we're just gonna lock ourselves in a room and make sure we get work done.
It really does sound like they're gonna fuck each other, huh?
It does. The whole joke is it sounds like they're gonna fuck each other. That's where that's the bit, really. And it's like, no.
Yeah. So where we talked about with their episode 4 felt like it was really just a really harsh, like How I Met Your Mother script that was like left over and they just like changed the character names, right? This one feels like it was just like any other sitcom, right? It for me, I think part of the reason why it's so forgettable for me is like this could have been an episode of Rules of Engagement, right? Like I was like watching this and being like, yo, you could plug David Spade into this, no problem. There's just like episode 7 is one of your most stock standard, to the point where some of the stuff about Jesse and Sid starts to get like borderline like offensive in a couple of moments of just like, yeah, who cares if they are gonna lock each other in a room and fuck each other? like
they only do it every couple of weekends when they're both really busy.
It's just like it's just such a wild like bit, because what's the joke, right? Like
they're painted like birds, Siege, and they do bird face paint, and because the fact is that they're still distracted. It's right. It's such a weird moment. You know where the joke is in that episode? The joke in that episode is Charlie and Ellen at Pemberton's trying to hunt down who gave a bad Yelp review about Charlie, and then shock of shocks, it was Ellen when she was drunk.
Yeah, it's a very good Charlie episode.
That's a great it's a good Ellen episode too. Like it really moves the needle and it pushes forward. I could watch a show about Ellen and Charlie. I don't know how they find each other to become roommates if the other four are not there, but like it really is. Their relationship is wonderful.
Yeah.
And
this show really benefits from having an ensemble of really fun people on screen. So like one of my favorite bits is talking about Modern Family in this way, like the what are the best team ups episodes where they just pair up like unusual couplings and to see what happens. And like some of the best stuff is when you see Alex and her grandfather together because you realize they're the same person. Like that kind of bit is hilarious to me. And so one other place where How I Met Your Father excels is that it's got a hell of an ensemble cast, and all of the pairings are interesting pairings to me. Like when they get together, like you mentioned with Sid earlier, like there isn't a person in the group that he can't have a heartfelt moment with. And with Charlie, there's not a person in the group that he can't get into silly shenanigans with, where it's not fun to watch, like that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, 8 arguably is not that fun to watch. Because 7 begins sort of the reveal that Valentina, up to this point, has been sort of this fun-loving and cool character, but she's kind of got a selfish and mean streak to her that we haven't totally seen come to fruition until the 7th episode, where she agrees to help Sophie, but then when she sees that she can use it to, like, elevate her own brand and her own Instagram, she kind of leaves her oldest friend in the dirt.
Yeah, we're like, and again, I think this is just the nature of just episode 7 is just one of the most poorly written episodes because of the ways in which it just is. Things just happen just because things need to happen, as opposed to it being anything organic in like the world. Because we've gotten the hint that she is somewhat like self-centered and selfish throughout the show as like a joke. Like episode 1, there's a ton of moments where she's really just like, I mean, the whole break up, get back with Charlie is full of a bunch of selfish stuff on both of their parts, right? Like, but this is the first time where it is like malicious, like where it happens and it feels gross. And yeah, you're right, it is very weird.
But it weirdly kicks off this whole thing because going into the next episode, we get to see, because she reveals at the end of 7 that, like, I tell you that my job is glamorous, that I'm doing all of these fun things, but really I'm just an assistant to a guy who's like abusive to me. But I'm putting in my time because I saw The Devil Wears Prada in 2009. And and then we get to see her there. And first up, shout outs to Dan Budikinski. I love him. He's a fantastic actor, and he nails it doing like a shitty fashion boss thing. But then, like, even with all of that, her stealing a like $30,000 bag from the office to donate to that auction is such like a destructive and mean and illegal thing for Valentina to do.
Yeah.
Like it's just
weird.
like you talk about how like you have to do this stuff and what you're doing, and then he's mean to you, and he is bad. Like the fact that he has that Valentina doll so he can claim he's talking to the doll but still kind of verbally abuse her. A fact that she is not only aware of but calls him out on. Like that's gross. That's like a gross moment in it. But then to be like, I'm just going to steal this multiple $1,000 bag and think that there will be no consequences from that. Like, it's such a weird moment for her character.
Yeah. It's just...
I'm sorry, like, I haven't really considered just how weird that moment is for her character until just now.
No, it's like eventually the series realizes that the rubber kind of needs to hit the road on the storytelling portion.
Yeah.
And like unlike How I Met Your Mother, did How I Met Your Mother have a 13 episode first season, or was it?
It was 22.
Yeah, I mean, like you got like a full season to really flesh stuff out and have your filler fun, but then also tell these stories. This has 10 episodes. And it's like they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to be able to do the whole like long arc storytelling that How I Met Your Mother excelled at. But at the same time, they wanted to get in their filler episodes because they still want to be a sitcom. So like it's this weird moment where in the back half of the series, it just tries to kick so much shit into gear. And by that point, I was so like, that like I told you, like episode 6 was where I kind of checked out. So like when it gets to the point where it wants to start telling story all of a sudden, and the first episode that it starts to tell story in is 7, where a bunch of shit just goes like sour for a bunch of people. Like
I mean, it's weird that 7 is the first time they try to tell story, but it feels like such a generic. This could be anything. This doesn't have to be How I Met Your Father.
And part of that is probably because so many people do things out of character in that particular episode.
Yeah, it's very... And then you get to 8 where you have the one thing with the bag, and then like the Sophie and Jesse like really leaning into the fact that we are starving artists. Like there's that moment where he's like, oh, I spent all my money on studio time, so I'm going to be late with the rent. And I'm like, why? Why are you booking studio time? Who the fuck are you that you're booking studio time? Like, I have not gotten any indication from you. The biggest thing that you are known for is having your proposal shot down.
Yeah.
Like, what you're not at studio time level. Buy a freaking Scarlet interface and record to your computer.
It's also a very weirdly alienating issue for a character to have that's supposed to be kind of budding romantic interest for this character. Like, who out there relates to I spent too much money on studio time so I can't pay rent? Nobody. Like that.
But also,
like,
he hadn't written anything until the episode before where he finally starts writing again.
Yeah.
And like, where are you ready to be in a studio recording this?
Exactly.
Like, what the fuck?
Oh, so now's a good time for us to talk about this in terms of time, right? Because the other thing that we're supposed to believe about all of this is that this is only happening over a matter of a few weeks, right? Because there's like a moment in like I think episode 10, where they say, I've known you for like 3 weeks now or something. And it's just like, what? Like,
okay.
So
that's, time is a weird thing. In Stacy, Drew and Sophie have been dating for a month. So from the time that Drew is introduced to the 6 episodes, so a 3-episode span, a month passes, which that sort of works out. I usually like to think that each episode of a television show represents a week in the life of my people.
Right.
But then by the time we get to episode 9, which we're going to go back to 8 because there's some other stuff in 8 that I want to talk about. By the time we get to episode 9, Sophie tells Drew's mother, Sue, that they've only been dating for 2 months, to which she said, that's how long I was dating my Lou before he proposed. So between 6 and 9, another month has passed.
Yeah.
But then everything that is going on from 7 to 10 is like 4 days.
Yeah.
Because at the bat mitzvah, she's told you can submit to our new voices program, and that submission needs to be in it by like the end of the week. So then she takes all the photos, and then, you know, whatever. But then the 9th episode is the next day from the 8th episode.
Right.
And then the 10th episode is the next day from the 9th episode.
Yeah. So much like How I Met Your Mother, where in the last season, they just decided to do all one day. It just gets really wild, the way in which time like slows down in the last few episodes. Yeah, so time is kind of all over the place, and it becomes really kind of hard to keep track of like how long certain people have known each other and been together, especially because the first episode of the show posits the idea that really they all kind of just met each other.
Right. But I mean, time has to move on for Ellen and Charlie to not only find the apartment, but then move into the apartment. So
Sure.
It kind of works. But at the most, Jesse and Sophie have known each other for 3 months.
Yeah.
That's like the most comfortable I am to agree with, is that like they've all known each other for about 3 months.
I think maybe that's what it is it's the conversation when after he makes her drinks in the apartment and she says something wrong and he kicks her out. There's I think he puts a 2-month mark on it, or like a 3-month mark on it in that conversation.
He doesn't actually assign a date to it. Okay, do we want to just jump to 10? He says we've known each other for a while now. He doesn't say it. He doesn't give a numeric to it.
I thought he said a few months, but I may be misremembering.
I mean, it's intentional, but he says we've known each other for a while now. We're not just two strangers who hooked up in a bar. I mean, you can look at it if you want to, but it definitely insinuates that they've known each other for a while. So the fact that like he's in love with her isn't completely off base. It's not Ted Mosby telling Robin Scherbatsky, I think I'm falling in love with you after 24 hours of knowing her.
Right.
Like that's nuts. That's a crazy thing. That he meets her, asks her out to dinner. She says, I can't on Saturday. What about tomorrow? And then after they go to dinner, he says to her, I think I'm falling in love with you.
And then they plant their fucking flag because he has time to rethink what he said. And he goes, no, you know what? Why can't I be in love with her?
Yeah. And then he actually says it because like there was that time taking my notes, watching the first episode of How I Met Your Mother, like he doesn't say I love you. He says, I think I'm falling in love with you, which still crazy thing to say on a first date, right? To a person that you literally just met. But then when he does like, it sucks you can't tell someone you love them on the first date. Does it? Or is that like real needy and represents something a little dark about you as a person, guy? Yeah. So going back to 8 though, I love the dentist thing. The dentist guy who like sees all of these like budding creative types who want to be famous and like is old enough so that he's not in it for the money. He's kind of just in it to help people. That's a beautiful storyline. I really do like that whole thing. But then, you know, Charlie has to steal the bag to show that he loves Valentina and he doesn't want her to lose her job. It's nice, I guess, but it's weird. But then you finally get to the point where I'm like, go fuck yourself, Drew. Because this guy who Sophie has, I guess, been dating for 2 months, says, well, your photography is a fine hobby, but you need to get a real job.
Right.
Like, you don't know me long enough to tell me how I should live my life.
Yeah,
guy.
no, I mean, yeah,
Like-
no, the reveal, the final reveal that this whole thing about him being beyond her in maturity, and really what that means is he's just a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it comes to fruition, it comes to a head. Yeah, and so now here we are after this, where we are kind of thrown into the last 2 episodes with.
Oh, well,
just
at the end of
chaos.
8 is where Jesse and her kiss.
Right.
But we don't open on that kiss at the beginning of 9. No, we open to all credit to Will Fournier, the captain, and Becky of Boats. And even Sophie's son is like, why are we hearing about this random couple? And I'm like, I'm just happy because the captain showed up.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I love me some Kyle MacLachlan.
Looking real good with the gray hair,
Oh,
by
he
the
looks
way.
great. And then also Laura Bell Bundy playing
Yes.
Becky again was just
Yeah.
like, I'm like, this is great. Like, what a obscure enough reference to How I Met Your Mother that not everybody's going to immediately get it, but like the true fans are going to.
Yeah.
It
No,
was
it was a
nice.
great. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So episode 9, after everything that happened in episode 8, episode 9 it takes a complete left turn and becomes, like I said, like what ends up working for me are I said episode 10, but really episode 9 and 10 become just their whole own thing. Like they take all of the pieces that we have been given over the last 8 episodes and they put together what they want the rest of this show to really be, and it's very interesting to me.
I don't disagree. The only complaint that I have about it is that episode 9 ends with "to be continued," and it's like, you've been serialized storytelling this whole time, guys. Like, we didn't need it. We didn't
or
need it to
or
be
put it at the end
continued.
of every episode, guys.
Yeah. Or at the end of it, yeah. Oh, there's also that weird moment. I think it's before episode 7. No, it's before episode 8, where they do a previously on How I Met Your Father, and it's literally, "You've impressed me. Submit a photo to the Young Voices program," and it's like, that just happened. That just happened, and like it's a 15-second previously on that
Yeah.
could have happened in the storytelling.
Yeah.
Now, if you recall, I had just been told, and so I was flat out trying to find my photo to take.
Yeah, Hulu figuring out the structure still,
Yep,
I think,
that's
and
true.
that's really interesting.
Television still figuring out the structure.
Yeah.
Because you think about like How I Met Your Mother, to pay some credit again to that, really introduced serialized storytelling into sitcoms.
Yeah,
In a way that,
like truly,
yeah,
truly, what's the word I'm looking for? Formula important serialized storytelling.
yeah,
Because like serialized storytelling is always there when it's fun, but this became, I mean, in much the same way we talk about with like the kind of the Marvel movies, where suddenly you start to experience some serious FOMO if you miss one because you know you don't want to miss out on what's happening in the next thing. Like they introduced that to the sitcom, where like you wanted to watch this week's episode of How I Met Your Mother because you didn't want to be out of the joke 3 episodes from now.
right. And I think it really like led into and bled into the reason why DVDs became so appealing, because, oh my god, I did miss this episode, I'll buy the set and then I can see it all together.
Right.
Like it's gross in the fact that it's trying to appeal to that after DVD market, but it changed what was happening on television at the time.
Right.
Because it became what everybody did. And it really came, like my mother always says, when we were kids, if we missed an episode, we missed an episode, and that was too fucking bad. And I'm like, yeah, but also when you were a kid, like, it wasn't always directly connected to each other.
Also, when you were a kid, there weren't 1,000 television shows, so
There
would
were 3
rerun
channels.
shit
You don't
all
shut up
the
about
time.
that.
They would rerun shit all the time.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And you had TV Guide that actually could help you manage the wilds. TV Guide now is just Entertainment Weekly focusing on television. And I love it. I like my TV Guide subscription. But just saying. Yeah, so episode 9 comes along and we see the captain. And it really does kind of barrel and change into what it's going to be. You have Friends Soccer Day, which that's why I'm convinced #Jasper is the father, because he puts on a Friends Soccer Day shirt. He's the only person who puts on a Friends Soccer Day shirt. Nobody else but, I mean, like, obviously Charlie has one on, but it's his event. And then the only person who takes part in it is, like, the cool Gen Z kid.
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, I love Jasper. Jasper is such a strong part of this show, and he's just an ancillary background character.
Yeah, well, he's what's his name? Who we get to see in episode 10 there, Carl.
Yeah, he's kind of like the Carl of Pemberton's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. It's nice, but he's also hilarious. Like, he is like legitimately, oh, I need to go. I gotta go record my podcast, so I'll be back in 3 hours. Like, I relate to that.
Yeah, the episode 9 also has the really weird story where Drew's mother gets involved in the
Yeah,
right?
that whole thing first of all, Drew's parents are Sue and Lou. I said it before, but here, that's cute, but also I kind of want to slap whoever wrote that joke. Yeah, so Sophie, after kissing Jesse, they decide that they're going to go out and have a proper first date that night. But the issue is she's still dating Drew, even though he was a real cock to her at the party.
Right.
Like, he's like, yeah, what about the bird shit on your shoulder? And she has a broken tooth. Like, you don't know what happened to her. Sympathy in those moments, guys. That's my pro tip, right? If your girlfriend shows up with a broken tooth and bird shit on her shoulder, don't be an asshole.
That's just a little tip.
That's just humanity coming through. So she's like, yeah, I'm going to go break up. So she goes to his apartment, but his parents have surprised him by showing up in order to drop the news that his father's going to go to jail for Bernie Madoff level, like, financial fraud.
Right.
That's the one that they name check there. So his mom sends Drew and Lou off to talk to Sophie and try to convince her that, like, she should marry her son. And the whole thing is that there's this underlying, first of all, is Jolie Fisher, who's playing his mom. And I love Jolie Fisher, I do, but fuck Jolie Fisher in this role. Because Sue Mosby is an asshole. I know their last name is not Mosby, but as soon as Will said it, it just is like, yeah, no, I'm okay with it. It kind of has a nice roll off the tongue, you know?
Yeah.
But her ulterior motive of the whole thing is that they want to drop the news onto their son that his father's going to jail. And wouldn't it be great if he has the consolation prize of being in a relationship? And Sophia's straight up like, no, I came here to break up with your son.
Yeah, your son's a dick, and now I'm starting to see why.
Yeah. Oh, you're hyper manipulative, you stupid crazy person. I should just leave and never talk to any of you people again. That's what a person would do. But, like, kudos to Sophie for, like, being emotionally mature enough to know, no, I'm actually going to say to this guy, we're done. And it's mostly because she doesn't want to start off her relationship with Jesse on, like, a lie or in a relationship with somebody else. Not going to reference things in my own life that are similar to that. Not me, but people that I know. But they've been on my mind a lot lately because it's March. And we'll move past that to the Jesse storyline. Because the other thing that happens in Rivka Rebel... No, not Rivka Rebel. The 8th episode... Perfect Shot is the fact that Meredith, Proposal Fail's other character, is back to talk to Jesse. And again, Leighton Meester's having a moment. That's my boy and How I Met Your Father on the Say Report. Maybe we'll do single parents next. We're not doing single parents next. Don't get your hopes up.
Sorry, Leighton.
Sorry, single parents. I love you as a show, but you got canceled, and it makes me sad to watch you now. But she shows up saying that she wants to talk to Jesse, and her big reveal is she has a new single dropping that's about her relationship with Jesse. And
she is Taylor Swift, is like the bit.
I guess, yeah, kind of in a lot of ways. Hadn't really considered that. I understand why I like her more now. That worked out. Those were words. And this is honestly my biggest sticking point about How I Met Your Father. I know I've probably said other ones, but this is one that really bothers me. And that's the fact that they go on Spotify to listen to the song, which is called J Street, but there ain't no J Street on Spotify. And where How I Met Your Mother was fucking amazing was with the interactive stuff in the real world.
Yeah,
like Barney talked about his blog, and right. Barney really had a blog. The fact that Robin Sparkle's video was like on YouTube, so you could go find it and like sharing it and be like, oh my God, I'm living in the same world as the guys from How I Met Your Mother. Like, I'm really sorry about that voice. Not a cool new voice, Devin. And it bums me out that I can't listen to all of the lyrics of J Street. They literally only recorded that I'm still missing J Street part that we hear 2 times in the episode. that is called J Street.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of makes me a little bit sad that we don't have that tie-in marketing. But yeah, she wrote a song about J Street and how she's missing J Street, and everybody is so like, oh, she's a genius because J is for Jesse. And I just like, it's the first time I really looked at all these characters, Siegen Won't Shut Up About Pretty Smart, and thought, wow, they're all kind of fucking idiots, huh?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like the bit with this, I'll be honest, this stuff all kind of worked for me because it did feel like it was, again, it kind of harkened back to some of the sillier shit that you would see in How I Met Your Mother.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was really good stuff for Jesse to learn more about his past relationship with Meredith, and also I was just so blindsided by the weird shit going on with Drew.
Yeah, no, I get that. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed the J Street episode overall. It was rewatching it, and like, there's that moment where she's listening to it in the bathroom as she's psyching herself to break up with Drew after finding out that his father is going to jail.
Yeah.
And she does the like turn back to look and say, "Clever, Meredith." And it's like, no, it's not really that clever. I don't know what you're doing here. What has happened? Why am I watching this show? And that's an afterwards, because the first time through, it was one of those moments where like, fuck Jolie Fisher, like poor Drew for this situation, but also get out of there, Sophie, because this is like a level of stuff you don't want to be in. And like, and the moment where I'm like, but I also hate Drew, is she's like, I'm sorry about this. I know the timing is terrible. And his response is, it's not ideal. It's also my half birthday. Is like, dude, I'm all for celebrating your half birthday. It's like a fun thing. Like, you do shots, you do as many shots as half your age, and you have a fun time with it.
Why
right?
not just make it his birthday?
Yeah, exactly. Why not just make it his birthday? And then that's why his parents are there. Yeah. Like, did his parents come to visit for his half birthday? Wouldn't that have been a funnier thing if she goes to break up with him and it turns out it's a whole half birthday party? Yeah. For him, like,
no,
and she
instead we have
to
introduce the idea of financial.
Like, it just would be like awful. Like, I don't like it's like a wonderful thing, but then he says that, and I'm just like, you know what? If the whole joke had been it's your half birthday, then it's funny that like in that last moment you're like, oh yeah, and on my half birthday. But when like it's just the thing you introduce for like ha-has at the end, it falls so flat and just makes me say, yeah, she made the right decision with this guy. Because it's not more important that it's your half birthday, the fact that your relationship with her is ending.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, this is the episode where it's revealed that that Hannah may be gone longer than expected with Sid. And this is the moment for me. You know, you said earlier, like, why doesn't he just leave and go with her? And like, you know, because New York is their home, blah, blah, blah. But this is the moment where she reveals, like, I think that this is going to be longer than I thought. That's when I was like, okay, well, now's your time, right? You decide, do you go with her, or is this really your thing? And like, and this has been, it's just such a weird, like, dramatic pull into this relationship, like, because it's completely both expected and unexpected in this show. It was just a weird moment for me. Like, I didn't love that this was like a decision that they had to make, and like, on the one hand, that emotion can be played up really well in shows, right? It's just not, this show didn't earn that moment, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
So yeah, when I talked about it earlier, what I was more referring to was with the benefit of all that knowledge, like, he should definitely go with her if she's going to be going there for a thoracic fellowship, right, at whatever hospital she's currently at. Like, it doesn't make any sense that he would stay there, especially with everything that he said about the bar hemorrhaging money and it not being worth it. Like, there's really nothing keeping him in New York anymore.
Right. So why is this moment not the moment that he says goodbye to everybody, which would be really interesting?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Then you could still see it, right? Like, you still talk to people, right? I talk to you. You live about as far as New York to California, right? I imagine
Right.
Los Angeles. I don't think that she's in Syracuse. Yeah, it's just like one of those situations where that's the sort of thing that would happen, and it would make sense, and we'll see where it goes from there. But especially, like, we'll save the 10th episode as its own meal, even though we've kind of given some aperitifs to it right now. We'll talk about 10 as its whole thing, because the other thing that happens is Charlie and Valentina, and the fact that he reveals that he's homesick, and that's why he cared so much about Friends Soccer Day, trying to share something of England, the only thing from England that he feels he has left, considering he forsook his family to follow Valentina to America, and then subsequently burned his passport, which was really dumb. But I say it was really dumb, but if you go to the consulate or the consulate and say, you know, my passport was stolen, they'll understand that because you're in New York, and it's a hellscape. There are teenagers who are given free cigarettes, stealing things from whoever comes across them to be indoctrinated into a life of ninjutsu.
Cats, dogs living together.
Mass hysteria. Orokusaki. Yeah, it's there's a lot that's going on there, and it's just, and it's something, again, in hindsight, based on something that's revealed in the 10th episode. But Tom Ainsley's face in that moment where she says, we'll have a couple of Rugrats of our own, is heartbreaking. It is just a heartbreaking moment. And then she never really gives him the opportunity to finish that thought. And it totally makes sense why the 10th episode opens the way that it does in relationship to that conversation. But the question I have to ask you is, did you know that she was every Spice Girl before she revealed that she was every Spice Girl?
No.
I totally did. I'm like, she's every Spice Girl. And then she revealed, I'm like, I'm so happy. And it was really great that, like, visually she was every Spice Girl but Ginger, and then it was the voice of Ginger.
Right.
Because I'm like, you know, because she wasn't there all the time. That made me very happy, that whole bit. And the Love Actually, because Love Actually is having a moment too. Like, Mr. Mayor really had a whole thing, made a meal of it with its Christmas episode, and then to do another Love Actually joke.
Just
like, and it worked better in How I Met Your Father.
I thought we had all culturally decided that movie is actually secretly terrible. I thought that was.
Oh, that's just the thing that, like, we all know it, but we all just kind of forgive it.
Okay, excellent.
Excellent. We all know that this is a terrible movie, but what else are we gonna watch?
This is just about a bunch of powerful white dudes abusing their power over younger women. But all right.
Right, but Chiwetel Ejiofor is there. I know Chiwetel Ejiofor's name. You learn how to say names, and sometimes you make sure you get to say them whenever you can. Yeah. So then the 9th episode ends, and we get to the season finale, which I don't know the title of, but I'm sure you have written down, I hope.
Timing is everything, Dad.
Timing is everything. And that's why we're doing a time capsule episode, because this is the type of deep dive I wanted to do on How I Met Your Father. But what a shitty episode this would have made, like, for a Sunday episode, to not talk about everything else that's gone on this week.
Yeah.
But, like, for us to get all of our ideas and feelings about this show out into a time capsule and then unsuspectingly drop it on the people when, like, we have a blackout or something, like, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing that we're doing. Timing is everything. More than likely the title of this episode.
Yep.
just for the record. Bam! How it hurt my fingers. Yeah, so Timing is Everything is the finale of the first season of How I Met Your Father. And it opens again with the Captain and Becky now getting divorced. Yeah. And again, her son being like, no, you left me on a cliffhanger. I need to know the story. Even though I established in the first episode, I'm aware of who my father is.
Yeah, oh my God. It's another one of those things where you just kind of have to, like, consider the conceit here. Like, this
consider the conceit. That's a wonderful statement.
You know, there's in order for this story to work, we have to be like a captive audience to this mystery, but at the same time, from the perspective of this person that should know the answer, right?
Yeah, like why is he so invested on whether or not Jesse came to dinner? Is he not his father?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm pretty convinced that Jesse's not the father of this kid at this moment. I
At
just
this moment,
need to
yeah.
say that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was somehow Sid or Charlie.
I couldn't. I don't know because this whole episode just decides to turn the entire thing on its head.
Yeah, it really does. That's a great way to put it. So we open with the captain and Becky, and they're in divorce proceedings, and all she wants from him are boats, 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 and that's going to be important later. And then we get to Ellen coming home from after her interview with Goliath Market, which was nice, right? Because that has to be a subsidiary of Goliath
Goliath,
Bank, right?
yeah,
Like,
exactly, yes.
which like just wonderful. And the guy just not getting that he's the head of lettuce joke,
It's
which
such a dumb bit. Oh
it's a
man.
dumb bit that's elevated from the fact that the guy doesn't fucking get it.
Well, and then gives her the call
And then
later on
gets it
once he
later.
does.
Yeah.
The like the rule of three on that one where it's revealed later where he calls back and he's just like, I got it.
You're hilarious and hired because you're so funny.
Yeah, yeah.
That like you know how funny you are because you told me the joke 4 times and I was the idiot. Do you want my job? And she comes home with a cat that looks like a cow. That she names Kate Meow Kinnan. I told myself I would say it, so that's the only reason why I said it. And Charlie has just had fun, sexy times with Valentina, but he can't sleep, so he asks her to do that thing where she scratches her back and sings Enya to him, which, like, real building of the relationship between Charlie and Ellen.
Yeah,
Like,
I
let's
know.
just, like,
I wanted to see more of that. I was like, wait a minute. This is a huge reveal here that this has been going on.
that, like, they clearly have a shorthand and their friendship has grown in ways that we have not been privy to.
And let's be clear, I am fully convinced that it's platonic, but
Oh,
platonic physical affection between these two characters is a new development.
yes, exactly. Yeah, they make sure that from a television show point of view, she's gay, so nothing's ever going to happen between
Exactly,
them.
nothing can ever change because bisexuality can't possibly
Bisexuality
exist.
does not exist in television.
We say that, but there is a whole
Oh,
bit
it
about
happens.
about the girl that is dating her and her brother.
Yeah,
But,
exactly. But
yeah.
that's. But is she? I feel like she's more in. I don't know. Margot Hartman. She's the worst. She's like, "Do you have Wi-Fi? I need to send a bomb threat to Panera Bread." And it's just like, why? Why are either of you with this person? Yeah. So no. Bringing it all back together. And then Charlie reveals that, despite loving Valentina, she revealed last night, kind of offhandedly, that she wants to have kids someday, and he is vehemently against that.
Yeah.
Simply because of how terrible his own like upbringing was. Like his mother was very abusive to him, and he doesn't want to do that to another human being.
Yeah.
I'm laughing, but like that's what it is, and it's kind of uncomfortable. That like the way that he puts it, and he's just like, I could never be that to another human being, so I've resolved myself to the fact that I'm not having kids.
I mean, he's like 2 steps away from claiming himself to be child free, like
Yeah.
as a trait, right? And
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's pretty serious.
Yeah. And the only reason he's not allowed to declare himself child free is because Valentina wakes up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we cut back to Sophie and Jesse at the bar. Or that might happen a little bit beforehand. It feels like the big opening scene, which is another weird part about the episode, is that one between Ellen and Charlie. Because so much, like, that actually gets a weird resolve in this episode, as opposed to Jesse finally not standing up Sophie, I keep calling her Sophia in my head, Jesse not standing up Sophie at Titanic, the punny Thai restaurant, and him being there and being like, I decided to turn down, I'm done with Meredith, well, I'm done with Drew, let's go have sex. Which, that's nice. It's nice that they got physical so quickly, especially because we know about her intimacy hang-ups
Yeah.
from episode 6, where she's like, this is the first time Drew and I are going to be sleeping together, and part of that is because I actually like him, and I'm not sure how to act in a relationship where I actually like the guy.
Yeah.
Um, and then while they're spooning, and lovely callback to what's her name, Valentina feeling smothered in the relationship, but I'm always Little Spoon, where Jesse is Little Spoon to Sophie, and in his sleep, Jesse says, "I love you, Sophie," as she loses her shit.
Yeah, this feels like the most Ted Mosby thing ever.
But it feels like the most Ted Mosby thing on Sophie's end. I don't know. I am so uncomfortable with that. I'm reminded of the old joke, and maybe it was a comedian that I worked with like 10 years ago or something like that, about my wife will have a dream where I was mean to her in the dream and then give me the silent treatment the next day.
Yeah.
Where
I,
like you can't be held accountable for the stuff you say in your sleep, can you?
I don't know, which to her credit and to the show's credit, she does get to the point where she realizes she needs to talk to him about it because it does
Yes.
throw her for a loop, but she wants to get it out there. And when she does, he doesn't back down from it. That's
Right,
the
and
thing.
that's the most Ted Mosby part, is the fact that he doesn't back down from it.
Right.
But the freaking out because of a thing that really isn't huge. I mean, at the end of the day, Sophie and Jesse both have some Ted Mosby in them.
Hmm.
If they both didn't know who their fathers were, it would not surprise me to find out later down the line that they were related, especially since Leighton Meester showed up.
Yeah, but we're burying the lead here. So
Yeah.
so in order to kind of sort herself through this, she goes finally for the first time ever to the bar downstairs.
Yeah, so she goes to the bar below the guy's apartment, McLaren's, and I'm all tingles. As soon as she walks in, and it is that iconic shot that I watched for 9 years of my life. I'm all tingles, and I'm just like, oh my god, it happened, and then Carl, you see Carl behind the bar,
Mhm.
iconic Carl, and she orders a whiskey, neat, straight up on the rocks, and he's like, "That's impossible. I cannot serve you a whiskey like that." And then we see the back of her head, and we hear a familiar voice, and then those tingles, they're a full on shivers. I'm a Ed Sheeran song when I hear Robin Scherbatsky's voice, and then I'm melted when I see her,
Yeah.
because if you go back to How I Met Your Franchise, the episode where we first talked about this show, we were like, it's fine. Just the apartment is enough. Just the apartment is enough to tie it to the world.
Yeah.
I thought that eventually we might see one of the characters. I certainly didn't think it was going to be in season one.
I thought it was gonna be season one, but I couldn't have told you who it was gonna be. I was ready for it to be like to be Barney or for it to be Lily, like for there to be just a drop in. I am very pleased that they made it plot relevant, that they made it like worth it, that it was so well done. Like it's a great moment
It is a
because
fantastic
it
moment.
could have been a throwaway cameo for a bit at any point in the season, but saving it for the finale and making her basically her spiritual guide for this episode is awesome. Was just a great move. Almost felt like in like a weird way, like this really cool passing of the baton and this realization upon watching it a second time now after seeing that episode that it really is kind of like How I Met Your Mother, just as if it were
Robin's
from
point of
Robin's
view.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like it really did feel like it was a really good moment for and it like let's be honest, they like when they announced that they were doing this and they were going to basically do this like weird like Falstaff retelling, right, where they were just gonna like cast like a female Ted Mosby, blah blah blah, like there's a lot of ways in which this could be seen as like a move, like a power move of some kind, a statement to say we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to tell it with a female like slant to it, is a thing that to say nowadays, right? So for it to be
Yeah, we
not
did an episode, right? Ghostbusters, Answer the
right,
Call.
Right. So for it to be Robin to be the one that shows up felt hugely kind of important to that matter. And the ways in which she guides her in telling her like, like timing is everything and sometimes timing is shit. Like is like is such a it was beautiful. Like it really was. And so that's what I mean when I say that this really kind of swung around and brought this show back for me is because now that I'm like seeing like what like the kind of things that they're capable of, I am on board to see a season two. And this moments with the two of them really are the ones that cemented it for me.
Yeah, Robin showing up is not the reason I was full of rage. Let me
No, of
just
course not.
make sure that that is known. I did. I melted. I was theirs. I was putty in their hands when they showed Robin Scherbatsky in this show, and the fact that not only is she her spiritual guide in this, but the fact that she's this famous reporter that
Mhm.
Sophie and Valentina kind of stan in their own apartment is wonderful.
Yeah.
And, to her thing to Carl, like, I have fans. Yeah, people who have fans don't usually go around saying, I have fans. Like, it's wonderful. And she's also going to meet with two of the worst Jeopardy guest hosts, Savannah Guthrie and Katie Couric. It's wonderful. Like, and it all checks out. It all works. Really, the only thing that I don't love about it, and it became more apparent on the second viewing, is that fact that, like, they kind of made Robin, like, a little sympathetic and nostalgic for when she was dating Ted, and that makes me sad, right? Because it just reminds me that, like, at the end of the day, that's the end of the story,
Yeah.
is that he just told this story to his kids, and then he gives her a blue French horn, and then, like, that's the end of it all. I don't know. It makes me sad that, like, Robin's totally gonna fall for it because of what she said in 2022 to Sophie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes me a little bit sad because she's at least, I mean, she's done with Barney because their marriage only lasted 5 years.
Hmm.
So, like, when I was like, isn't she married? I'm like, no, 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 they're divorced at this point. And it works, and it's great that it's Robin, but also, like, I don't know. There was that one tinge of sadness for me, is the fact that Robin's like, timing is everything. So now, because Ted is married to the mother, I can't think of the mother's name. I know Kristen Milioti. I don't know the actual character's name. Uh,
Mother.
yeah, mother, right? No, they give her a name at some point, but it's not important. That, like, because Ted is married, she's like sad that she's alone. I don't know. Like, that just kind of feels a little out of character for her, and it made me a little bit sad.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know, like she shows up. I think the thing that they get that felt really good for me is that she is that kind of I don't know the best way to put it. Like she's not ditzy, but like that idea that like she's always kind of really been not the brightest person, right? Like she's just happy to have like a fan show up, and they're just like, it's not really a fan, and she's just like, no, it's a fan. Get us a drink. Like that whole like attitude is felt like so like her, and so
Oh yeah.
that felt
Oh,
really
and
good.
she's
Like
still a badass. Like, and
yeah,
that,
yeah,
at
yeah.
the end of the day, like, Robin Scherbatsky is a
Yeah,
badass.
the whole story about the bull and all that stuff
Yeah.
is really good.
Like,
Yeah, so I mean, like they nailed a lot of stuff about her character, and I was very happy to see her doing as well as she was. I honestly wasn't even thinking about it in the timeline of who she was with and who she wasn't. Like I was just happy to see Robin again.
yeah. I mean, that's second time through is where I really was like, oh yeah, but. And yeah, I'm just happy to see Robin. Both times that I watched it, it was one of these things where, like, and then, like, the tears to think that, like, she's still out there and she's still living her life, and that means that everybody else is out there. But is she still the one who gets to be the person that she was all those years ago? Because we know what everybody else did and where
Yeah.
everybody else went. Like, because Barney completely apparently changed his ways once he became a father, and all of those things, right? Not important because they don't give you time to dwell on it. She tells Sophie to go forward 20 years and ask herself, what would you have done on that night where you met Robin Scherbatsky? And it's like, I should have gone back and talked to Jesse. So she goes upstairs, and then Meredith is there, and this has been a highly contested discussion topic in the house. Does Jesse go in for the kiss, or does she just kind of kiss him?
I
I mean,
I
his
don't
lean game is on point, to quote Sid. My boy's lean game is on point.
I don't know. I mean, like, does it matter? I mean, like, he's not with anybody right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
he's
I
not
don't.
with anybody right now. He has thrown her out for being like, I don't know, maybe you should go. Like, because she's not 100% in on it, even though by all accounts she should be. Like,
Yeah,
that's the other nice thing that Robin's like, this is a guy who gave you everything you've ever wanted, but it came too fast, so now you're afraid of it.
yeah.
Like Robin really calls her out in her shit in a way that I think only Robin Scherbatsky would be able to
Mhm.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but yeah, even regarding the fact that if he's with somebody or not, like, because the other thing is like, oh my god, he moved on that quickly from what he was saying to Sophie. But my take on it is, she's the kind of person who, like, she already admitted that she wants him back. She could be the one who goes in for that kiss, and then after the kiss, he's like, yeah, what was that? Like, what are you doing here?
I honestly almost wonder if that's going to be the opening of the next
I
season.
honestly feel like that's where it
Yeah.
goes from. I don't think that it's a reciprocated thing. I think it's a thing where she showed up at his apartment to try to convince him one more time to come on tour with her, and led with that kiss.
The reason that I think it's going to literally think it's going to be the opening of the next season is because we then don't see Jesse for the rest of the episode,
Yeah.
which is fucking buck wild for the series finale with everything that has happened. That's the final moment that we get of him in what is right now the entire series. So like after everything, that's it, and then it's gone. Like they have to go back to his side of that story at the start of the next episode, and then go to him like showing up at the event or whatever. Because after this, she moves on. Sophie moves on to her event that night,
Yeah.
and this is where we kind of get like the like check in with everybody else to see where they're at, and we learn all of this new stuff. We learn that that Sid and Hannah have run off and gotten eloped. We learn that that Valen how do you say her
Valentina.
name? Valentina, thank you. And Charlie have broken up. We learned that Ellen's had a really good day. She now has a date once again and got the job.
Yeah, that
they're
cat turns out it belonged to Rachel from
yeah,
all the way in episode 5.
yeah. So like there's all sorts of there's all sorts of really good wrap up in this moment, right? And there's a really beautiful beautiful moment between Sophie and Val where they
Not
kind of
tonight.
just have a not tonight moment that is really I mean honestly just like a punch in the gut really
Yeah.
for what's happened to the two of them.
Like, we're gonna enjoy tonight, even though both of us, by all accounts, would be allowed to just crumble after the days we've had.
All right, Dev, pull the pin.
And then we go back to the captain and Becky of Boats, and their divorce proceedings. And it turns out that the vessel that Ian was on to try
Boat.
the the vessel that Ian was on to try to increase the procreation of the coral reef was owned by the captain. And Becky's punishment to the captain for cheating on her is getting all of the boats in the divorce and sinking them. And despite his protestations, she also sinks that marine biology vessel. Which means Ian's back in New York. And I have to imagine he's attending the gallery show because he knows that Sophie has something showing in it.
I mean,
Like,
has to.
he
Has to
didn't
know
just
that.
wander into it, right?
So, who did he talk to? I don't know. Roll credits. That's literally what happens.
Yeah.
He walks in the door, you're left with all of these questions, and roll credits.
Yeah, not even a to be continued. No.
Yeah.
Uh,
How
yeah,
will I know if it's continued, though?
I don't know. It's it's why I was so upset. I was so angry because so much of that last episode is such good storytelling and flies such in the face of how I Met Your Mother would have approached the same sort of situation.
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't have gotten to the reveal of Hannah and Sid saying, because we're already married. It would have been, yeah, I don't know how big a problem the wedding is going to be. And then they would have kept that to themselves to be a thing to be revealed in the opening of the next season.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
No, they give you so much closure and they give you so much so much catharsis with so much of what's going on, which is like the total opposite of the concept of what's going on. You know, minus the stuff that happens with Jesse, that to this point you're just waiting to see what that reveal is going to be. And they pull a sneaky on you. They trick you.
They bring back Ian, who I wasn't a fan of Ian to begin with. Going back to that first episode and the first two episodes of this series, when she's like, I think we should give it a try, and he's like, no, I don't want a long distance relationship, but then he still tries to have his cake and eat it too with the cute little texts.
Right.
Like, she offered that to you, and all that would have meant it to be in a long distance relationship like that is essentially that you're saving yourselves for each other.
Right.
Like, and if something came along, I'm sure you would have talked about it. Saying that we're in a long distance relationship while he's out on his marine biology expedition would not have meant we're married. It would have been, I'm not going to actively be looking for somebody else to date.
Yeah. Like we talked about this in the episode
I
too.
know,
Like,
I know. It's
like there are people are allowed to have complex feelings, and if she did not want to have to be dealing with them while this was going on, one side of that is because she shouldn't have to. Another side of it is because we're supposed to believe she's quote unquote immature and can't
no,
handle
but
that kind of
she's the
stuff.
one.
And,
But
like,
she's the one who says that she wants to do
right,
it, and he turns
which is what
it down.
makes it right, which is what makes it a big kick in the nuts. Is her trying to take that step, and him not willing to take it with her is terrible. You're right,
Yeah.
but like I don't know, man. The second they show him, I was just like, well, gotta watch next season. But to your point, it is the most How I Met Your Mother twist ever.
Ever. I was so upset when Drew showed up in the third episode and it was that reveal that I was at the party. Because I'm like, no, I don't want there to be a fucking parade of dudes who are at the party. I don't want that to happen. Right? Yeah. I don't want that to happen. Understanding how one of those four guys from the first episode eventually became the father of her son is enough for me. And understanding that life is messy and there are 100 of things along the way, like, that's fine. But if they're going to continue to be like, oh, you didn't see me? You were leaving with everybody as I got to the party.
I wasn't at the party, but I had a coat checked there.
Yeah. My umbrella was there.
Oh, God.
It's green. It's Ted Mosby's weakness. Yeah, and then for that reveal that, like, oh, Ian's back, and it's another thing that we talked about, that, like, they could bring Ian back at any time. That's how streaming works. And, yeah, I know that I'm going to watch season 2 of How I Met Your Father. I understand that it's a thing that's going to happen, but I was just so mad that, like, after kind of putting their stamp on themselves, especially with that passing of the baton from Robin to Sophie, to be like, now you're your own show, go fly, to end like a season of How I Met Your Mother, gutted me. Yeah. Absolutely gutted me.
Yeah, I think that if I have any wish for season 2, because at this point we've talked about season 1 for a good solid 2 hours, but if I have any hopes for season 2, it's that it finally just becomes its own thing. Like, I want it to always have those little references here and there to the world of How I Met Your Mother, but like I need it to find its own footing, to find its own groove, because I think that's why it became so bland for me, is that it was either not enough like How I Met Your Mother or too much like How I Met Your Mother this entire time. And they need to convince me to stop watching it that way. And I'm putting the onus on them for that. Like, as much as I as much as I want to say, like, I need to learn to temper my expectations. Like, you don't get to call down the power that is How I Met Your Mother. You don't get to ghost that show for 10 episodes and then expect me to not sit around and be stuck trying to figure out if I should be or shouldn't be comparing it to that. Like, you need to establish what you're gonna do. And like you're saying, it rubber bands so much in this particular episode between not wanting to be that show and wanting nothing but to be that show, that it becomes unwatchable at points.
Yeah. Because, again, just that moment where Meredith kisses Jesse, she doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't go there to try to get any other information from it. So, yeah, that's where you open from. And if we know, from what we know about Meredith and the fact that she wants Jesse, why wouldn't, when he opens the door, the first thing she'd do be to kiss him?
Yeah, or it doesn't even have to open on that, but there needs to be the opening fight between Sophie and Jesse, and then Jesse reveals what actually happened, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like there just needs to be some closure on that, and that's got to be coming in the first episode of the next season, which, as I said, is February
Or
2023,
Jesse
so
is
we have time.
fucking gone. Or Jesse is just gone as a character.
That'd be fucking wild. Because like, how do you do that and still have him living with Sid and like, or do you not? You have him just go
Sid
off
is
on,
also gone as a fucking character.
yeah,
In the break, Sid moved to LA.
yeah.
And then, well, I guess
Jesse goes on tour with Meredith, and we never
Yep,
hear him
and we
again. Yeah.
never see them again. Which, that happens all the time, right? Like, that was the other thing about seeing Robin, is that fact that, yeah, those people that were her friend family at that time, she's not in touch with anymore. And that was hyper relatable. That,
Yeah.
like, people come and go from your life, and then being like, yeah, even though look how thick as they were as friends, it eventually went away. Like, because it sometimes happens that way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it worked for me. Like, it was really relatable. And honestly, if we never saw Jesse again, if Sid and Hannah being married means that Sid moves to LA, and season 2, the only carryovers we have are Sophie and Valentina, and where they're, and I guess Ian, and where their life goes from there. On one hand, I wouldn't hate it, especially because the half-life of friendship seems so much shorter now. And plus, they've only really known each other for 3 months. So it's not like, it wouldn't be like you and me tomorrow just not seeing or talking to each other anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah. No, yeah, I completely agree. It'd be wild if that's what they do after establishing this whole series, but I don't know, man. I am tentatively excited to see another season because I just want to see if they can pull out of this weird world that they're trying to live in, where they're not How I Met Your Mother, but also don't want you to forget, hey, we're related to How I Met Your Mother. They got to figure out what they are on their own, because that, I think that is it. Is How I Met Your Mother was so uniquely its own thing, was so different from anything else that was on TV at the time, that to see a show that wants to capture that while emulating that, it doesn't work, because like, you gotta be your own thing, you gotta be something different. And maybe they don't want to be, maybe they just want to kind of ride coattails, if that's what they decide to do. And if that's the case, then I all the power to them, but I'm not interested in watching that.
I mean, I need to consciously call this show How I Met Your Father every time I talk about it.
Right.
Because I just want to call it How I Met Your Mother. Because that's what it feels like. And as weird as How I Met Your Dad is, right? That one weird episode and glimpse that we got into that world, as absolutely crazy as that is, it established itself as something different in that pilot.
Definitely something else.
In a way that, like, How I Met Your Father in 10 episodes has not committed to one side or the other.
Yeah.
And I think really that's why 5 and 6 are so powerful for me, because they're the episodes that feel the most like their own show.
I can get behind that. I really feel like that came to a head for me for 9, and then most of 10 up until the final moments. But yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, well, like, even unfortunately with the framing device of the captain, your mind is already kind of drifting to How I Met Your Mother in 9 and 10. As great as so much of those episodes are. Like, it's...
Yeah, and I mean, you can't deny, Robin showing up and all that, too.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
there are moments that bring your attention to the fact that this is a semi sort of continuation of How I Met Your Mother.
And like I said, like, for me, that balance in 9 and 10 is exactly kind of what I wanted from this show. Is a thing where these are all their own people. It's all its own show. There's its own thing going on, but there are these references to the fact that they exist within that world. I'm fine with that, but it's when you start kind of bringing in not just the people from that world, but also like the whole oeuvre from How I Met Your How I Met Your Mother into it, with having the Ian reveal at the end. Like, that's not just having somebody show up and you go, oh, that's right, they would exist in this world. No, that is straight out just like, oh, this is just a How I Met Your Mother moment, just rewritten for this show, and that's just no fun.
That Ranjit didn't walk in as the limo driver upset me so much. I wanted to see Ranjit because I love Ranjit. I do. I love him. Yeah, it's I'm gonna watch season 2. I know that. And here's the only thing that leads me to believe that our whole theory that Sid and Jesse and Hannah then all of them are gone in season 2 is the fact that future Sophie has her first photo hanging. And even though it's her first photo, so like it has that meaning, if that photo had Jesse in it and things ended as poorly as they did, I don't know if I would hang it prominently in my house.
Yeah.
I probably still have some relationship with him, and it's on good terms.
Yeah, no, I for the record, I do not think that this is the end of Jesse and Sid.
No, I certainly hope it's not after all the building that they did. It's just, I wouldn't be surprised based on how it ended.
Yeah, no, I know.
Yeah.
We'll see. We got 1 year. Maybe we'll come back to it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about the premiere of season 2 of How I Met Your Father. It's going to be a whole year, and then they're going to drop 20 episodes. That's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's television, but it just feels so crazy in the streaming world, right? I can't believe that we watched 10 episodes of this. It does not feel like it was 10 weeks ago. Well, it wasn't. It was 9 weeks ago.
Yeah, but
when we recorded How I Met Your franchise.
Yeah, man.
All right. So anything else that you want to add to this time capsule before I hermetically seal it, or?
Yeah, let me get my yearbook in there. You want to sign it first?
Yeah, I'll sign it. Have a great summer.
Ouch. Hurts. All right. No, man, I'm good. This is good.
Yeah, this was excellent. Thank you for letting me do it. And again, like, that rage is gone, but I was so unhappy that they just rested on the laurels of How I Met Your Mother in the end there.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree that happened. I guess I didn't take it as personally.
Well, you know why I took it personally? It's fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. I felt fooled a second time. And it's undeniable that, like, this is a show, I gotta tell you, when I'm like, is it available at midnight? Is this one of the shows where I can? All right, good. So I'll watch it at midnight, and then it's just because I kind of want to be connected to it. But at the end of the day, they got their hooks into me, and I found myself not feeling that same level of devotion that I did for How I Met Your Mother, but still caring about these people.
Yeah.
And wanting to watch every week and avoid spoilers and be part of it. So, yeah, it's just that. But yeah, so if you would like to dress me down for any of my thoughts about How I Met Your Father season 1, bring it on, right? And that's on Twitter at Devin D. Decker.
And if you got any theories about how season 2 is going to go, hit me up at Siege versus the World, because this is the time, people, where we get to place our bets.
All right. And now, Will, put away your overnight oats and bring us home. Have a good one, folks.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host, Devin Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report. And you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.